You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And I'm better from COVID. I'm not all there yet, I have to confess. I'm still 2 or 3 pancakes short of a stack. I'm much better, though, no comparison. It's just that I'm weak, I tire easily, I don't sometimes find myself thinking as straight as I would wish, or as blissfully crooked as I might wish. I just, not fully right there yet. I don't know whether this is long COVID or intermediate COVID or what length COVID this is, but I don't like it. I don't have my edge or even a blunt anything. However, we do have a good program for you today in dire straits. The crisis in the Middle East between what is being called Gaza and Israel is heart-shattering. And as you may have heard or read, I spent quite some time in the Gaza Strip in the late 1980s and wrote a lot about the women there. I was working with women there as well as the women in Israel and in West Bank and the entire immediate region as well as the broader Middle East. And that was heart-shattering. But for the right reasons, because these women couldn't understand why it couldn't be solved simply and peacefully and easily. That's like 99 and 44 100% of them couldn't. Certainly you have fanatics in every grouping, but these women, both the Israeli and the Palestinian women, were remarkable. And still are, and I still communicate with them, to my great grief because of what they're going through, which of course comes out in the news as being inhuman when it's all too human. I'll have a few more words to say about this at the end of the program. But now what we're going to do is turn our attention to Afghan women. This program was planned for some time about, hello world, what has happened to Afghan women? We know it's bad. We know it returned to what was sickeningly called normal the minute the U.S. left, and that the Taliban have reinstated all of their draconian, vicious, and murderous rules. But we haven't kept track, except those who are Afghan, of course, or those who are specifically interested in what became of them, like me, and I hope like you. So we're going to tackle this inside the headlines, and we have as our special guests 2 experts who have also been, as activists, trying to move the needle on this issue. Okay, so before we get to any of that, we have to go inside those headlines. I'm going to devote the entirety of Inside the Headlines to a hair-raising list of the Taliban's decrees and directives infringing on the rights of women and men. This Taliban list was assembled and researched and published by the United States Institute of Peace, which is a very reliable source. And I'm just going to do a selection, sometimes giving the dates, to specify the dates, but mostly just giving the list, because it's 9 pages, single space, and it's, well, you'll see. The Taliban's decrees and directives infringing on the rights of women. August 30th, 2021. That was the day that the U.S. actually withdrew from Afghanistan. That was the day that they declared a ban on coeducation and prohibited men from teaching girls. In 2021, also, they banned girls from secondary education. The next year, they closed schools for blind girls in Nangarhar and Kunar, and that's particularly important because there's a high incidence of blindness among poor Arab women, since cousin marriages are fairly frequent. You find this in the Palestinian women and in Egyptian women as well, but only among the poorer classes. In 2021, women were banned from attending and teaching at Kabul University. They then ordered universities to enforce gender-segregated classrooms. They ordered female university students to cover their faces in classrooms. This was all in 2022. And in October of 2022, they blocked women from choosing agriculture, mining, civil engineering, veterinary medicine, and journalism as their university major, because the Taliban said these subjects are too difficult for women. But then they finally lowered the boom in December of 2022 by banning female students from public and private universities until further notice. Then there's the issue of justice. This is broken down by focus on subject matter. So this is institutions of justice. November 2021, stormed the Afghan Independent Bar Association and ordered the suspension of their activities. May 2022 dissolved the Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission. The same year, they established a female moral police department. And the next year, they invalidated thousands of divorce cases that had been decided during the Afghan Republic. The Taliban's emir in 2023 issued an order to courts to re-examine and invalidate legal cases that had been settled by the Republic courts that did not comply with strict interpretation of Sharia. Then employment in NGOs and United Nations, which one would think would certainly be neutral turf. Well, it's not. In 2022, they ordered NGOs to replace board members and those in leadership positions with Afghans living inside Afghanistan. The same year, Habutullah, women were forbidden from working in offices and that women must not leave their home. In the same year, they banned female staff working for international NGOs. Employment in government institutions and businesses. In 2021, they replaced the Ministry for Women's Affairs with the Ministry for the Propagation of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice. In the same year, they ordered professional and working women to stay home till further notice. And a year later, they ordered the enforcement of segregation of women's and men's offices and said that women must not leave home and should not be employed in offices to begin with. In 2022, they directed women employees of the Ministry of Finance to send a male relative to take their jobs if they want to be paid their salaries. The same year, 2022, they removed female flight attendants from their jobs. And they banned women-run bakeries in Kabul. And a year later, they instructed female staff of hospitals in Kabul to wear the full hijab and to mask themselves at all times. That same year, they closed 4 medical centers run by female doctors because male patients were treated by female doctors. Then in media, In 2021, they banned women from television dramas. In 2022, they banned foreign TV series. And the same year, they ordered female TV presenters on air to cover their faces. And they ordered media outlets to ensure female TV guests cover their faces. That same year, 2022, they removed the women's seat from the Commission of Media Violations, and Taliban officials verbally directed media outlets not to produce content about women's hygiene issues. And then it just goes on, and women outside the home. This is a huge one. From some samples. In August of 2021, ordered women to stay indoors at home because soldiers aren't trained to respect women. God forbid we should train the soldiers. No, just dump it on the women. September of 2021, banned protests and slogans with no prior approval from the Taliban, and banned women from traveling long distance, that's 45 miles, road trips without a mahram. In December of 2021, they ordered the closing of public baths for women in bulk. And the following year, they ordered coffee shop owners in Herat not to serve women if the women are not accompanied by a mahram. That's a male guardian. They stopped issuing driver's licenses to women in May of 22, and the same month, they issued an order that women aren't allowed to use public transport if they are without a mahram. They issued a recommendation and an implementation plan in 2022 regarding proper hijab practices, stating that the best hijab is for women to wear a burqa or simply to stay at home. They ordered further closing of public baths in 2022. They told female government medical staff that they had to be accompanied by a mahram while going to their offices in Kandahar. In 23, they ordered restaurants not to serve women without a mahram. And it goes on. And here's a good one. The head of the Ministry for the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice in Kandahar ordered all the provincial departments to ban girls and women from going to health centers and cemeteries. In his message, he claimed that, quote, women and girls wear makeup when they go to these places and pretend they are ill. Anyone whose daughter or sister is like this, if she has a brother, arrest her brother. If she has a father, punish her father, and punish him for not correcting his daughter. Close quote. And in May of 23, they banned young and unmarried women from going to health centers, and religious shrines in Kandahar province. Last but hardly least, they dictated different days for men and women to visit parks. And they issued an order in 2022 that banned women from going to parks, where park authorities could not ensure segregation. And then finally, they banned women and girls from parks and gyms outright in the end of 2022. They banned women from visiting historic places in 2023, from playing sports in 2021, from going to gyms in 2022, and from traveling abroad without a mahram. And they instructed travel agencies not to sell tickets to women without a mahram. Last, but definitely not least, they reinstated in 2022 hudud and qisas punishments in such cases as robbery, kidnapping, and sedition. Those are public whippings and lashings, and sometimes worse. So if you think that the Taliban did get more severe after the U.S. left, but not as much as they had been, well, think again. It's time for our first break, but I'll return in just a moment with my special guests for today's program. their biographies in our conversation. Jessica Neuwirth and Asila Wardak. Don't go away. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
My guests for today's conversation are Jessica Neuwirth, co-founder and co-president of the ERA Coalition Fund for Women's Equality, and author of Equal Means Equal, Why the Time for the ERA is Now. She's one of the founders and the honorary president of Equality Now. From 1985 to 1990, she worked for Amnesty International, and she's also worked for the United Nations Office of Legal Affairs and as director of the New York office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. She served as a special consultant on sexual violence to the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda and as special advisor on sexual violence to the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in 2010. And she organized the UN High-Level Panel on Reparations for Victims of Sexual Violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. She's the founder of the Frontline Women's Fund, and in 2011, the fund became integrated into the Sisterhood is Global Institute, a feminist think tank founded by Simone de Beauvoir and myself in 1984. And the fund currently has re-granted over $6 million U.S. to frontline women's organizations and activist groups around the world. Asila Wardak is an Afghan human rights activist, a women's activist, a former diplomat, and the first Afghan woman elected as a member to the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation's Independent Human Rights Commission. Wardak is one of the co-founders of the Afghan Women's Network and served as minister counselor at the Afghanistan mission to the United Nations. She's also worked as the head of the human rights issue for Afghanistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and she was an advisory board member for MENA's List, an organization dedicated to women's political participation and equality. She's a 23 Harvard Radcliffe Institute Fellow, SIC, and a Robert G. James Scholar Fellow, focusing on policy and practice. And she's contributed to national and international policies, laws, and strategies for refugees and returnees, and to the inclusion, protection, and promotion of women in leadership positions, and supported women-led organizations in building their capabilities. Jessica, Asila, welcome to Women's Media Center Live. It's very good to have you here.
Great to be with you. Thank you for giving me a chance.
My honor. I have to start with offering my deep sympathies and over the earthquake tragedy that you recently just had in Afghanistan, where I think 2,000 people were killed. It seems that the planet itself is crying out for calm and peace. Between that and the situation in the Middle East with Palestine, Israel, it's just one blow after the other. But I'm so sorry. I hope, do you have friends or relatives caught in the earthquake, Asila?
Yes, that was really unfortunate situation. An incident in Afghanistan, despite all the problems that we had, that was another catastrophe and tragic incident, unfortunately. Like as you said, more than 2,000 people were killed, and then thousands of people injured, and thousands of people, they lost their houses. and because there is no modern facility or system to check, still there are lots of dead bodies under the soil and yeah. And the big casualties that made were women and children, because women, because of they scared of Taliban, they even couldn't go outside the home, and men, they left them behind. So the first earthquake was not that much strong, so everybody jumped out of their houses. I mean, men and their sons.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, women and daughters, they were stayed at home, and then there were lots of aftershocks. So that's why the big number of casualties are women, unfortunately.
Oh my God, women always get
Yeah,
it.
that's also another tragic.
Exactly.
But I hope the international community and then the UN should provide more support to that area, because that's completely gone under this earthquake, and people, they don't have meaning of living or anything else.
Well,
so it's very tragic.
And between Israel, Palestine, and Ukraine, Afghanistan is like, what? Who? Where? Oh, we forgot about that. I mean, I really worry about it being left on the back burner, the backest of the back burners. So it's a terrible situation. Well,
it's a terrible situation, but unfortunately, I must admit that women are all these at this center of this conflict. Like, for instance, in the past 2 days, I was following the social media and news that I could see the women in Israel, the way that Hamas killed them and stripped them on the streets and burned them or injured them. Both sides use women as a tool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's both sides. Always. Well, let's focus on Afghanistan. As you can tell, I'm still not in the best of robust health, so I'm going to mostly turn this over to you and to Jessica. Jessica, of course, is the director and head of the donor, what used to be Donor Direct Action, and has now been renamed Frontline Women's Fund, and which itself is part of the Sisterhood Global Institute, which I co-founded some years ago with Simone de Beauvoir. And the Afghan Women's Forum on Afghanistan is what we're here to talk about, and your involvement in that. So, Jessica, would you do me a favor in my brain-fogged state, and would you do a quick elevator speech summary of what the Women's Forum is and why and how we founded it and how it's been functioning?
Sure, with pleasure. I mean, I think the Women's Forum on Afghanistan is really just such a great example of the kind of vision that the Sisterhood Global Institute started with almost more than 35 years ago with you, Robin, because I think the goal of the Sisterhood Global Institute is really to give voice to women around the world and try to build the women's movement. And so we are trying to bring that to what is probably the worst situation in the world for women right now in Afghanistan, because it's institutionalized gender discrimination, or as people are calling it now, gender apartheid.
Yep.
And we started we started this initiative a couple of years ago, right after the Taliban takeover, when lots of women in the global women's movement, and in particular political leaders, women political leaders, former undersecretaries general, former foreign ministers, they were all meeting and trying to figure out what can we do to help women in Afghanistan. And we thought, well, maybe they should start by talking to Afghan women and getting their thoughts on what was happening and what would be helpful. And I think in theory they would have loved to do that, but they just didn't have the wherewithal. So we helped organize a forum online through Zoom, and we had, I think it was about 12 or 13 Afghan women leaders, including Asila, who basically briefed a number of prominent global women leaders, including you, I think, were there, and Gloria Steinem, and political leaders like Mary Robinson and Navi Pillay from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and just all over the world, a really strong collection of women who had wanted to do something and weren't sure what, and really had this chance then to listen to Afghan women. And out of that grew a statement, and then it just seemed like something that maybe we should try to move forward. And so the goal of this Women's Forum was to create a platform that would be controlled by Afghan women, representing Afghan women. It's chaired by the former Foreign Minister of Sweden, Margaret Wallström, who is known for her feminist foreign policy.
Yeah, she's
and
wonderful.
We have 5 very prominent and effective Afghan women leaders on the steering committee, including Asila. And we've just been working for the past few years with them to try to support their efforts to keep Afghanistan alive on the global agenda, as you mentioned, which is a challenge, and to really get the voices of Afghan women into the world through the media, through the UN, through lots of private meetings, public meetings, which we can go into, all really in the spirit of Security Council Resolution 1325 that recognizes the critical role of women in conflict and calls on everyone to make sure that their voices are heard. But that resolution, as we found again and again, and now again in Afghanistan, is honored more in the breach than the observance. So that's a long elevator ride.
No,
but,
that's very
hopefully.
No, it's very tight. I admire it. Asila, it's so, 1325 is so clear, and if it were ever observed, it would change the world, because women would have a voice. But it is so hard to impossible to budge it. The kind of things that we've been up against is that the Taliban just won't meet with women, and they don't want women in delegations that they meet with, but they want all sorts of things from us. From the West, from the United Nations. They want money, they want funds, they want. I'm sure now they will be appealing in terms of the earthquake, but they will ignore the greatest victims of the earthquake, as you just said, which are women. How this must drive you up the wall and through the ceiling. What do we do? What do we do about it? How do we move this?
Yeah, I really don't know. The situation is getting worse and worse because there is no solution.
Yeah.
And then everybody, all Afghans inside Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan, we were relying on the West, especially on the US and other alliances. But as you mentioned, money is going to Taliban, attention is going to Taliban, attention is going to men, but no one is talking about women, which is like more than, in Afghanistan context, we are more than 50% of the population in Afghanistan. But no one is even talking about us, because if they are talking like very sympathized way, but that's not going to change anything. Yeah. Because we erased from the whole society. This is really gender apartheid. Women cannot go to work, women cannot go to school, to university, women cannot go to parks. A big number of degrees, like more than 90 degrees since 2 years, were all against women movements, because women are not allowed to go to parks, women are not allowed to go to beauty salon, women are not allowed to even to public baths, because in Afghanistan, like it's like the structure is that most of in the houses there is no kind of facilities to take shower or to wash their but they have to go to the public to use the public hammam and the public baths, but that's also like
denied,
banded. They cannot go to use the public hammam also. So these are the problems. And also under the women's forum leadership, we thought that because in the past 2 years we were talking a lot and asking US and also West to help, but we totally forgot about the big players, which is the region.
Yeah.
The regional countries, our neighbors also. So under this umbrella and the forum, we decided to also contact with different players at the regions, Pakistan, Iran, Uzbekistan, China, all these neighbors. in regions. But at the same time, we are in contact also with women that they are living. They left Afghanistan and then they are living in the neighborhood, and also they settled in the region. That's what they are thinking, because we don't want to grab all opportunities to use the international forums to speak ourselves. But that's also good to get their voices, because nowadays no one is even paying attention to Afghan women, those that they are inside the country, those that they left and then living in the region, in the neighborhood. So we are trying to be kind of a bridge between the international community and also women inside Afghanistan, and also in contact with different politicians and civil society groups at the region to seek their help to find a solution for us. Because like 2 years, it's not easy. Like 2 years, imagine if someone's daughters or wives, they cannot go to school or work, economic
hardship,
problem,
right?
of course, education. It's a tragic.
And I would let me just jump in here and say, we've also tried everything we can to use the forums that we can access. So, for example, several members of our steering committee have spoken at the Human Rights Council. Several have spoken to the UN Security Council. We try to use every avenue there is, but recently it was so disheartening in terms of Resolution 1325, when the Secretary General and the UN convened a global meeting of all the special envoys on Afghanistan from all over the world. There's a U.S. special envoy, there's an EU special envoy, there's OIC special envoy. Lots of countries have a special envoy. So dozens of these envoys, all specifically focused on Afghanistan, met with the Secretary General in Doha, and we could not get one woman 1 second on the agenda. Not one. And it was just the hugest campaign that we just kept begging and talking about 1325, and they just didn't get any space at all. And
where is the bottleneck?
So I think
where is the clot? I mean, is it a particular country? Is it a particular person? Is it a number of those things? Is it, where do we put the pressure? What would make the difference, do you think, Jess?
I'd like to hear Asila's thoughts, but my sense is, there's a general, especially as time goes on, there's a lot of pressure, particularly from men in leadership positions who don't see and understand this in a personal way, to just normalize what's going on and just, start to move towards, dealing with the Taliban. And of course, that means shutting women down in all of these.
But if the Taliban say flatly, we won't meet with women, so don't send them in your delegations, don't send them in your NGOs, don't send them to policy meetings, etc. And if the international community then nods its head and curtsies and says, okay, we won't, then it's over.
Right. And even not only that, Robin, it's also women working in the UN. There's a Taliban, one of those 90 edicts is that women can't even work for the UN. Yeah. And that's a violation of the UN Charter, which, there's an equality principle that's so fundamental in the world that's just being spat on. And I think that the UN is stuck, and they're trying to figure out, well, do we let ourselves get bullied by the Taliban, or do we stand up for these fundamental rights? And sometimes it just feels like they don't understand. They feel like they have no leverage at all in the global community.
But and I know, and Asila knows that if they did stand up for it, eventually the Taliban would have to bow down. I mean, in other words, the Taliban wants what the West and the UN and the world can offer. And whether it's money, whether it's health, whether it's, and if the message were very clear, it doesn't come without, it coming through women, that would be it. But nobody seems to be. But Asila, you've run the gamut. You've received violent threats on your life due to your activism. You were in the Doha talks as a member of the Afghanistan High Peace Council. You're a career diplomat. Do you have any strategy, anything that you think would unlock this?
But as I said, that the only strategies that we have, this is kind of advocacy and consultation. And also we want to have a space on every table that they are talking about Afghanistan future in a current situation. But unfortunately, women are not at the central narrative of all this discussion. International community is talking directly with Taliban. They are talking about us, not to us.
That's right.
Even at the UN level, we asking so many times the Secretary General at least to meet with Afghan women directly and then to listen to their voice, at least even if it is a kind of protocol to show to the world, to show to the Taliban that I am personally very eager to meet and then to follow the issues. But unfortunately, the UNSG even didn't meet any single Afghan woman in the past 2 years. And I know that the world is also is very much busy with Ukraine, as you said. Now the Israel and Palestine issue, there are too many issues. But Afghanistan, one thing that making me very upset and sick because this happened under a democratic system in the U.S. We had strategic partnership. We are a good alliance with U.S. Government, but all these things are happening under the democratic system, under a democratic administration in the U.S. That's why making me very much sick. That's why no one is even talking. I'm talking about the U.S. politicians, because it's a joint failure. It's a joint responsibility. It's not only us or me to provide a strategy.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Tell me, the Harvard Radcliffe fellowship that you were on policy and practice last July, not this year, but the July 22, you were on a panel with U.S. Secretary of State Blinken and Rina Amiri and the Institute of Peace President Lisa Grand and Brookings Institution people and so forth. And the event was called Engaging Afghan Women and Civil Society in U.S. Policymaking, the launch of the U.S.-Afghan Consultative Mechanism. Gee, that sounds really good. Did anything come of that? It's now over a year.
Not that much in a pragmatic way, not that much. But still, the special envoy for Afghanistan, she is meeting Afghan women and traveling and then meeting different minorities group. But in a big picture, nothing came out of that consultative mechanism, because we were just thinking that maybe the leadership of that mechanism should be Afghan women. At least we should be on those meetings.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's why this is. That's why the the Sisterhood is Global effort and Women's Forum is so important, because it's Afghan women who are in charge of it.
On that one, I mean, the U.S., there's lots of organizations that are doing great work on Afghanistan. So not to denigrate any of that work, but there is a layer of international NGOs. And sometimes, they're the ones that are getting the bulk of the resources. They're getting most of the oxygen in the media air and the political air. And I think that's where the Sisterhood Global Institute has a different vision. So we created or helped create the conditions that allowed these Afghan women to create the Women's Forum on Afghanistan, but then trying to get that Women's Forum into these other, venues like that one is difficult, because they're basically designed for international layers that separate political leaders from Afghan women. And so you find Afghan women don't really end up playing a leadership role. They're more participants, which is still good. It's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not exactly the vision that we had. We really want Afghan women in the driver's seat, and we definitely want more consultation, than we've been able to get with everyone from the UN Secretary General to the Secretary of State, because they're just not hearing directly from a lot of these women. And the Secretary General in particular, the women on the steering committee have written to him several times and asked him for a meeting several times over the last 2 years, never been able to get a meeting with him. And it's not to say there aren't women in the UN at the highest levels of the Undersecretary General who have been incredibly helpful and You always find these women who are willing to talk and able to help, but we've never had a woman secretary general, as you know. And it's just, you just wonder, is it just a question of priorities that they don't? And of course, if we flipped it around and it were men and boys who couldn't work or go to school, this would probably be number one on everyone's agenda.
Dear, it would be solved in an instant. I mean, it's.
Yeah, in terms of funding, also, I must say that most of the funding are going to the international organizations, to UN and then organization that heading by men. Not that much to women organization inside Afghanistan, despite all these edicts and ban on Afghan women civil society organization, but they are doing lots of activities underground. But unfortunately, there is no sufficient fund, and that's why most of these women organizations, they had to close their offices because of lack of funding. So at the same time, those that, for instance, like this women's forum that we are running, we are working voluntarily, but there is no fund to run and then to have a big office or to do advocacy, because all these things are required money and then resources. So not only attention, but funding sources also going to main organization and then to international organization, not to women civil society organization.
That is actually that's a problem worldwide with women's organizations versus men's organizations, human rights organizations.
And then on the humanitarian side, and I'm sure it'll be true with this earthquake as well, but with all of the humanitarian aid, which is billions of dollars, which everyone supports, the efforts to help Afghan people live through all of these challenges. But at the same time, it's business as usual. There are these structures that have been used, and they aren't only unique to Afghanistan, but certainly in the last 20 years in Afghanistan, they've been criticized for corruption, and they're very male-dominated. And wouldn't this be an opportunity with the Taliban's edicts and this effort to just disappear women for the international community to say, you know what, our humanitarian aid is going to be channeled through women.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be amazing?
That's one of our recommendations. There's a lot of money there. I mean, billions of dollars. And it would be very empowering to women, and it would probably force the issue with the Taliban in a more effective way.
And it would be a model for other countries.
Women.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It would be a model.
It's just been a real challenge because the traditional models of distribution of aid also follow these layers of international organizations and then national organizations. And really, there hasn't been a lot of room created, maybe some room around the edges, but certainly not in a significant way for women-run organizations to be able to move in. And we know they would do a better job.
Of course they would
do a better job of making sure that aid reaches women, in fact.
Well, it's like if a child is hungry, a woman is not going to suggest that we write white papers about it. She's going to get a bowl of rice into the hands of the child fast. But what this process that you're describing does, of course, is re-victimize women. It passivates us. It's an inventive verb. Because it makes us passive observers, to be observers at all is something, but we cannot settle for that. We've got to be in there making the policy and making the changes. Otherwise, they never will be made. They never will be made. Oh, Asila, but you don't despair. Aren't you amazing? You just go on and you continue and you, with all that I know you've been personally, that I know that you've been through, and all the contributions that you've made to women in Afghanistan. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you. Any other last thoughts on what we can do, particularly now when the world seems to be on the brink of yet another convulsion?
I think my last message will be to the international, all the world leaders that don't spend more money on war, but instead spend money on women empowerment to have a better world.
Yes. Oh God, yes. And we know from deep research that has been done on this that women's practice, I'm not saying that they are inherently more peaceable than men, but women's practice, because of feeling responsible for children, because of caring for older people as well, because of their their classic role in the family and in society, women tend much more to be peaceable. And the most peaceful societies are those where women are considered equals. And the most warlike and aggressive ones are the opposite. So that should tell us. I mean, it's not made up. It's flat science. Thank you, both of you. Thank you, Jessica, for everything you do and have done steering the Sisterhood is Global Institute and the forum, and thank you, Asila, and everything that you are doing. And come back and talk to us again, because we've got to return to this again and again and again and again and again until people get it through their heads.
Thanks.
Thank you, Robin.
We have to take our last break here, but I'll be right back with some fighting words which this week emanate from the Poetry Corner. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Patriarchal history is the story of one long bloodbath, interrupted by moments of hope and eons of denial. Yes, those are fighting words, but I want them instead to stand as warnings in a time of abiding great sorrow. Inhuman, they keep saying, like animals. But our behavior is all too grievously human. When will we learn it? Animals are more civilized. They don't arm themselves and practice revenge. They don't lie to us, then walk back the false rumor. We've just spent time discussing the paralysis in which Afghan women find themselves, trapped, passive, reified objects, not active, self-determining subjects, no matter how they try, which is the story of women under patriarchal history. We have to step outside it to see it. Meanwhile, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict rises again, death following its footsteps, and the whole region bristling. In the late 1980s, I spent quite a bit of time in that region, working with women, Israeli, Palestinian, Egyptian, Jordanian. Women in Egypt, in the West Bank, in Jordan, in Syria, and in the Gaza Strip, the most densely populated piece of land on the planet. I've written at length about this in 2 books, The Demon Lover, The Roots of Terrorism, and in The Word of a Woman, a book of essays. So I won't go into detail or to repeat that here, except to say that I learned certain things from the women there, the same things. The same powerlessness, the same fury, women on both sides saying, no, 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 you will not use my children as cannon fodder. Women on both sides telling their stories of suffering, of laughter in the teeth of suffering, of crying, of weeping in the teeth of laughter. Women on both sides insisting that you must eat, feeding you love and food and laughter and lethal Middle Eastern coffee, even when your stomach couldn't bear it. Why? Because you must eat. You must be strong. We must survive this. Generations of women believing the myths that they would be safe in the state of Israel, only to live in fear. 3 generations of Palestinian women who have been born, lived, and died in the camps in unspeakable conditions. The despair of repetition, the despair of not learning despite what is being taught, the despair of a woman weeping, "We must intervene. The men are not capable of making peace." And I won't say which women from which side said that. But the truth is both did. Despair drives me to poetry, my only tool, and as I promised, the Poetry Corner each week will have a piece of work from Harvesting Darkness, the new book of poems. This one is called Winter Solstice, and it's a sonnet. I love juxtaposing the elegance of form with the crudest and cruelest of subject matter. The Winter Solstice. These small hours of a slowly dying year leak through night's cracks, pale, splintery, bleak. No window's warmth, no gleam, no wintry cheer shimmers at us. We crawl by in despair, weary of weeping, yet wary of growing numb, seeing a world doomed by our filth and rage, suspecting nothing now we grieve can gauge the final conflagration yet to come. Like children, begging for another chance, some claim to acquire night vision and to see bright blurs of hope through the debris, phosphorescent algae astride sea foam. Until that beauty, these glowing pearls of pus, reveals the true catastrophe, is us. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.